Hello there, my name is Ismail and today I want to show you how to make quick surfaces like floors or walls in Blender. So we have a plane here. I just gave it a solidify modifier to give it some thickness, and I want to texture it in a way that makes it look a bit realistic. And what makes a surface look realistic are the textures, especially the roughness and the normal maps. So let's do that, give it some roughness and see how that looks. Let me turn on lights here so that we can see some specular highlights as well, and let me also turn on my shortcuts so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to import in some textures here. So texture, image texture, and then navigate to somewhere. I can go grind maps. These are very nice for breaking up rough surfaces. So let's try using something like this here. And without even using any color map here, I'm just going to feed this directly into the roughness just to show you how that makes the surface look. You can see how it's breaking up the surface quite nicely. And if you give this some bit of color, you can start to see how that looks. Now, the resolution of your image or texture you're going to use is going to determine the quality or the look of the image of the surface. So if you don't have a high resolution image, your surface is not going to look that nice. A good way to make to use low resolution surfaces or low resolution textures and still get good results is to blend them with multiple surfaces. So you can see that the resolution on this is not the best, but what I can do is duplicate this and find another texture as well, so that I can blend the two, together. So I have this here and this here. I'm using Ctrl Shift and then clicking the node to preview that node. You can see they're not all super high resolution textures, but I can blend them to get a much more detailed texture. So to blend them, I can just hold on Ctrl Shift and then drag from one node to the other to add in a mix node. Now I can blend the two using this node here. I can also just use a blending mode here, any of the blending modes available here, to create a much more detailed texture. And if your texture is stylable, you can also just make it a little bit more high res by just increasing the scale so that it tells a bit. You don't want it to be too repetitive, but somewhere like that should give you something good to use. And if I use this here, you can see now we get a much more high detailed texture with small and large details. And if I feed this into the normal map, as a bump map, so let me add a bump node and connect this directly. Always make sure you don't have a too powerful roughness normal map. So you want to get a blend between, when you play with the roughness, with the bump map, make sure you're also playing with the roughness amount here. So because we have sent the roughness maps directly into the roughness input, we don't have control here. So I can add a convert math mode here, so that I retain some control over the roughness like that. Still, it's a bit too rough for me, so I can reduce the bump here. And when I increase the bump here, I'm getting a lot of small details that I don't want to capture. You can see we get quite a highly noisy image. So what I usually do is add a convert color ramp here, so that I can take out some of that detail. You can see it gives you something better to look at, and maybe just reduce the strength just a bit, or even make this a bit dark so that you fade in the details just a bit. And now you see, when we increase the roughness, we bring the normal map up, we are also affecting how the flow is reflecting. So we can come back and bring in some of that detail, some of that reflections back, and reduce this a bit. I don't want this to be too bumpy, so something around there. Sometimes you may even try to invert the map to see how it looks. You can see this surface doesn't look too bad. Now I'm just going to continue reducing on the bumps. You can see, if you see this kind of boxy effect here, it's usually a result of your texture map not having enough resolution. So you might want to go in and find, you can see we see those boxy pixels there, so that means that our resolution is not high enough. So you can further blend whatever you have here with another map. So I'm just going to duplicate this and find another image map, so this, and then I will blend this here. Just maybe let's try screen, or let's try multiply. That we can increase the scale of this to get some really small details, so that we can reduce on the blockiness of this map. So I can also tell this even further to get a higher resolution map on this as well. Now you can see we don't see that blockiness effect as much, and our map is now much more rich with very small and high detail, low frequency and high frequency details that we can use for the roughness and the bump. You can see even when you increase this, you get a much richer bump. If you zoom in too close, you will again start seeing those blocky effects, but it's not as prominent as we had before. Actually, I like this without a lot of bumps, so I like something like that. You can see we haven't even added in any texture for the base color. So if you want, you can now add in any image. Now you can use this for wood or any other texture you have in your texture resources. So let's try finding some wood texture and see how it would look on this surface. See this, connect this to the base. You can see that it looks way much better. And if we tile this, because you can see that the pieces are too big, you can get a much richer surface like that. And see how the reflections break up as a result of this roughness map we have added. You can increase the roughness, and you can also reduce that. Sometimes I also like to have more control over the roughness by adding a car ramp here between the maps and then the add node. That make this a bit darker, so that we don't have full white pixels from the roughness. Now we can control the overall roughness directly here. Again, it will depend on the look you're going for. Now let's switch out this here for another material. Let's try this surface. You can see this is tiling too much, but that's okay. We can bring back the scale just down. Another thing I usually like to add is a color mix RGB between the diffuse and the base color, and change this to overlay. And what this does is that if I want to tint the surface color a bit, I can just change that here. that. You can see what we have. Now, if you wanted, you can also add a dot map for this surface, something to break up the texture, because right now it looks a bit too clean. So I can add another texture here, image texture. We'll go to my grunge maps and find something that looks good enough. I think something like between this and this, let me just choose this. So if I mix this, Control Shift, click on this, I can use this as a factor, and now I have a dot layer I can add on top of my surface. And I can say this actually looks like a painted surface, which is nice. But if you're not going for that, you can just also add a math node here and change the blending mode to something like power, so that you can control how much of the dot you have. I think this would look more prominent on say a wood surface we had before. So let me find that. Wood surface, wood. Let's try using this. You can see those dark spots. You can make them look like real dot by making it a bit darker. Actually, that's not it. It's this here. And see, if we make it darker, you can see how it's breaking up that, but it's only breaking up the diffuse. We also need it to break up the roughness map. That way it makes it look like real dot. So I'm just going to duplicate this, Shift D, drop it in here, and again use the same node here for the factor there. Now it should be able to break up that surface, and this should be a bit lighter. You can see how it's breaking up that surface. Let me call this custom node groups, because that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, I'm also going to break up this tutorial into 3 parts. So after I make this, I'm going to segment it in 2 different videos, so that anyone who wants to watch different parts, it's easier. So I'm just going to make part 1 as what was it, blending textures, yeah, and then part 2 adding that, and then part 3, which is what we're going to be looking at, it's going to be about making custom node groups. So let's get into it. So what are custom node groups? So this is like creating a shader, something like a principal shader you see here. Instead of having all these maps, for example, if you want to tweak this, you have to know where it's connected and where it's connected from and what is affecting. Instead of having that many nodes, you just have one node group like this, and you only have sliders to work with. So let's set that up and see how we can get it to work. So the things I want to change in this is I want to be able to just switch out the texture and make everything just look nice like that. So you can see, and yeah, this is a bit too tiling, so just reduce this, and we have a new surface. So I only want to be able to change this, and I want to use this for different materials. Actually, let me duplicate this a few times just to show you what I mean. So we're going to create one custom node group, but be able to just switch out one texture to use for all the other materials. So I'm just going to move this. So all the texture maps that I want to have control over, I'm just going to put them on the far left, and everything else that I just want to use a slider for, I'm just going to have them here. So let's do that. So to create a custom node group, I'm just going to grab all the nodes between here and here, just leave out the principal BSDF and Control G, and that will create a new custom node group. This node group is going to have inputs and outputs, and right now we only have one input, which is our texture, and one output. I don't like how these are getting entangled or tangled between, kind of creating this wave-like structure. So what I'm going to do is, if you select the node group and hit tab to go into edit mode, you see the interface here, including your inputs and outputs, and you can reposition how these are positions by just selecting the node group. So for example, the normal map is up here, and it's what's causing that wave entanglement. So I'm just going to click this to move it down so that they are aligned as nicely. But right now the inputs have generic names. You can see color, and we don't really know what input is what. So what I'm going to do is tab into edit mode so that I can access this interface. And now I know color is supposed to be our base color, so I'll just rename it base color. Then I have roughness, and then I have normal, and that's good. Now we have the input. I'll change that to texture input. But if we wanted to control how rough the surface is, actually let me just duplicate this material so that we can, it's going to click this so that this is a duplicate material. Now I can just select this and switch out this texture to have wood. They're all going to still use the same material we have set, the same node group we have set. So let me just, this is going to be using that wood, and this should use, I don't think that looks nice. Let's find a metal surface. Yeah, this, okay, it's supposed to look like metal, rusted metal, but it looks like marble instead, which I'm okay with. Anyway, so yeah, you can see what we have. So I want to vary the roughness of these materials, but I don't really have control of that here. Actually, let me just expand this as well. I'm not using that. I don't have the control for that. So what I can do is tab into edit mode, and I know that I can control the roughness of these surfaces. So this node group is being shared by all these materials, different materials we have created. Just call this concrete, wood, and whatever the other is, metal. I just call this metal. So I don't really have control over the roughness, but I know that if I tab into edit mode for this node group, I know that this is let me see, yeah, this here, yeah, this controls the roughness, you can see. So, and I don't want to be tabbing in out of the node group to control that, so I can just grab that input here. Let me first expand this. This is the input, drag it out to the input node group, a node here. There is a dot there, so if you drag this to that dot, you just create a new group. And before we forget what that is for, I can just go to tab into the interface to rename this to roughness control. But let me see. Now if we play with this, you can see it's affecting the roughness of only this material, because though these are sharing the same node group, the settings can be different. So I can give this a separate roughness from this. But remember, this roughness, we broke it up so that we have a roughness for the material, for the surface, and a roughness for the dirt. And we created this dirt material. Let me see if I can find that. Where is our dirt? Yeah, I think this is our dirt. This is our dirt surface. It has a dirt color, and also has a dirt roughness. Okay, this is the dirt. This is the dirt control. Let me first preview the output. If I change the dirt color, okay, I'm looking at the surface instead of the surface. So tab into edit mode. If I change the color here, you can see I'm changing the color of the dirt. Actually, I'm changing the roughness of the dirt. Here, this controls the color of the dirt. Let me just make it something crazy so that I can easily identify it. So, but I don't want to be tabbing in, so I'm just going to get the color and feed it into the output node. I rename that to dirt color. But we also want to have control over the dirt roughness, and we have this input here, and for that, this is what controls the dirt roughness. You can see how that is affecting it. Now, instead of using a color input, what I'm going to do is that we're already in the node group. I'm just going to add a new value here. I don't want it to be color actually, so I'm just going to, let's see. You can just drag directly from the node group to the input. I think that's also going to give me a color value, which is not what I want. I don't want to, because it's going to be very confusing. I just want a roughness value like this. So what I'm going to do is let me see, tab into edit mode. So this is our color. Yeah, here you can just add a convert math node, connect that there and this here, and that should give me, okay, I think it's still giving us a color. So let me first remove this color input so that I just bring this directly into the add. Now you can see we have a value now. Call this dirt roughness. Okay. Now I have control over the color of the dirt. Let me select this so that I'm working on this. I have control over the color of the dirt and the roughness value of the dirt. What I don't have control over is the amount of dirt on the surface. So I know that that is controlled by this value here. You can see you can reduce the amount, you can increase that. So I'm also just going to have that as an input. And you can add as many inputs as you want depending on what you're going for. So I'll call this dirt amount. Now with just one input like this, you can create a variation of different surfaces. You can make it look super rough and dirty, or make it, okay, make sure that you, okay, right now the values are going into the negative, which is affecting how the overall look is looking. So but we can tab into edit mode and give this a minimum and maximum value. So the minimum should be 0 and the maximum should be 1. Same for the, actually the maximum for this, I'm not sure I can go around to 100, but the minimum should be 0. Okay, you know what, let's test this out and see. Let's not just guess. So so this is the dirt amount. If we go to 10, it disappears. If we go to 0, it becomes the dirt just takes over. So yeah, the minimum should be around 10 or 15, and then the maximum should be, let's do 15, and the minimum should be 0. The default, you can set the default value. The roughness should always be 1 to 0, and yeah, I think that's it for the most part. So I can't go over value of 0 and 15 for the dirt, which is nice. So I want some dirt. Yeah, so I can also duplicate this just to show you how easy this is to work with and how efficient this is. So I now have a new surface. Just make sure that I'm using a different material, so I'll just duplicate this, and now I can give it a new texture for it. So let's try something else. Let's try different surface, let's go with this. It's really rough, so let's make it a bit reflective. Give it some dirt. Change the dirt color, and we have a new surface. Now what we haven't added, remember these all had normal maps or bump maps, so we need to be able to control the strength of that. So I'm just going to also add that. So I'm just going to drag this into there, so adding the normal strength, normal. I'm just calling it bump strength. By the way, this node group is going to be available to my Patreon, so if you want to get it, you can find it there. You can see. The great thing about this is that I'm working on this material, but because it's sharing the same node group with all the other materials, those node groups have also been updated to add the normal strength. You can see. Okay, so I'm selecting this, give it that bump. When I'm working on bumps, I usually want to be able to control how much of the bumps, how much detail I want in the bump. So let me first reset this, and instead of using this color ramp, if you add a math operator with the operation of power, you can control how detailed your bumps are by using this node group here, this value here. So you can add that in, but I don't think it's doing much here, so I'll just remove it. So you can, any control you can think of, you can add it in and see how that goes. Let me fix this because it's not looking too well. I'm just going to reduce the amount here. And that's what we have. Yeah, so that's it. Again, I'm going to be breaking this up to different videos if you want to watch, and if it's just to make it easy to find the different parts. Thanks for watching.